Ooh, we could be live right
We are
Ooh.
live.
now. We are live. Yay! Yay! Welcome to the Street Epistemology call-in show on Saturday between the two practices on the Discord. Today we have a very special guest. I'm going to try not to fangirl here too much because I've been watching Fraser here for many years as part of my edutainment in space and things of science. So it's a real delight for me to have Fraser on as our first caller. Fraser, do you have a claim that you would like us to explore with you?
Sure.
And
Should
actually,
I
I'm
mention who
doing
I
it in the
am?
wrong order.
Yeah.
That's
yeah,
the
you
order.
wanna-
Thank you for
Yeah.
fixing
Okay. All right. No problem. Are you not edutained? I'm Fraser Crain. I'm the publisher of Universe Today, which is a space and astronomy news website. I've been running this website for 23 years now. We have tens of thousands of news articles about space and astronomy. I do a YouTube channel with, again, hundreds and hundreds of videos about news and stuff in space. I'm the co-host of the Astronomy Cast podcast, where we cover one different topic every week in space and astronomy. And that's, I guess that's my life. So a claim, sure. Yeah. So I believe that we are the only intelligent civilization in the observable universe. That is my belief.
Wow, the only one in the observable universe. Okay,
Yeah.
so let me see if I'm making sure I understand the terms. Intelligent civilization. Well, what would be the limit of that? Would that be they have language,
obviously,
or they have radio telescopes, or?
Yeah, I mean, people would, we'll have a field day saying, well, we're not even intelligent. So fine.
We're not even a Kardashev 1.
A technological civilization capable of tool use, like humans versus other fairly intelligent species on planet Earth. And that, I wouldn't give you a firm definition, but capable of space flight, technology, computers, things like that.
So space flight communications. Cool.
Yeah.
So what reasons, first of all, have you thought this for a long time? Is this a recent belief?
It's, I would say, for the last maybe 10 years or so.
Okay. So about 10 years. Can you point at any particular piece of evidence that knocked you over the edge, that convinced you from you're not sure to your current position?
Yeah, well, there's this classic idea of the Fermi paradox, this idea that the universe is big, it's old, that the second that life formed on Earth, it took off and essentially filled every single biological niche on the planet. And so life should be everywhere. And when you think about it in that way, then there's a lot of counter arguments that you can have. You can say, well, things are really far apart and we've barely started to look, and so on. But the part that Fermi was really getting at when he originally proposed the paradox was not that there should have been life arisen everywhere across the universe, but that at a certain point, technological civilization is capable of moving from star system to star system. They will eventually develop the technology to shift from star system to star system. So you can imagine some self-replicating robot probes that humanity will create in the next few hundred years, probably, that would be capable of going even a very slow portion of the speed of light to go to other star systems. And then they go to other star systems, and you can send, through sort of exponential growth, you can send a spacecraft to every single star system in the entire Milky Way in about 10 million years. And so this 10 million year time period has existed, 4 billion. There's been many chances for one civilization anywhere in the entire Milky Way to have been able to spread out to the entire galaxy. And the analogy that I always like to use is, imagine you have a sandwich and you have one little drop of mold somewhere on the sandwich, and you come back a week later and the mold is everywhere on the sandwich. So it doesn't matter where the mold starts. It doesn't matter where the civilization starts. It should have been able to spread out and essentially settle every single nook and cranny of this entire galaxy. And so the evidence of life out in the universe should be as obvious to us as evidence of life on planet Earth. We see it everywhere. And yet we don't see it as we look out into the universe. And for me, there are a bunch of possible answers to it, but the one that feels most likely to me is that we're alone, or that we're first.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I was wondering whether you mean concurrent intelligent life, or is there the possibility, or are you ruling out the possibility that there was civilization that has gone by the wayside?
I am ruling that out because like once life gets going, then it will continue to expand and grow. And even if in one part, even if a tree dies in one corner of the forest, other trees rise to take its place.
Okay.
And to clarify the last word, you had said in the universe, and you really mean in the universe, not just our galaxy, right?
Yeah. So one of the ideas is that as a civilization settles their entire galaxy, they will make changes that are obvious in various wavelengths of light. Like the impact of life across an entire star system can be obviously seen from afar. And so, for example, if some super advanced civilization gets to the point that they're using all of the light from their star, which sounds a mind-boggling possibility, and yet if you just extrapolate our existing energy growth historically over the last, say, 100,000 years of human existence, you can actually predict the date to within a few decades of when we will be using all the energy of our entire solar system. And it's not long. It's like 800 years, or I forget the number. Like within the next few thousand years, we will be using the equivalent of all the energy coming from our star. And that gives off a very obvious heat signature. And so you would see, astronomers have done surveys for this. They've looked out and they've scanned the Milky Way for evidence of essentially stars which are now just giving off heat as opposed to giving off visible light because it's being used by some advanced civilization. And they haven't found any evidence of this. And they've even looked for entire galaxies where all of the stars in that galaxy have been used by some civilization, and there's no evidence of that. You could see pristine, unused galaxies as far as the eye can see, and same with stars in the Milky Way. And so the kinds of searches that would turn up that sort of thing haven't nothing has come of it.
I'm curious, where are you on the confidence scale? 0 to 100 as far as the claim.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a ridiculous thing to believe, and it plays so little into my day-to-day life as a person who thinks about it. And I've kind of my default is like, let's explore the universe until it's proven otherwise that we aren't alone. Like, let's not just take it for granted that we are alone. And so, or let's not take it for granted that there's other aliens out there in the universe who will clean up our mess. Let's clean up our mess ourselves. And so, but I would say, I'm in the 80% certainty range. Yeah. I'm definitely more than 50-50. I feel more certain.
And where you said there was 10 years ago, you became more confident in this. And where were you before, 15 years ago? Where were you, and what was there information or just a different perspective that caused you to make that shift?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I was where most people would be, which is, of course, the universe is gigantic, and then there's planets everywhere, and we've barely started to look. So it's the equivalent of looking at a teaspoon in the Pacific Ocean and going, you don't see any whales, and so you don't see any evidence of whales. That is the traditional, I think, opinion. And I think the thing that changed my mind was actually my work in computer science, and starting to understand the exponential growth, the possibilities of exponential growth. And so when you think about how quickly civilizations could actually settle the entire Milky Way. And it's not long, it's 10 million years. And I forget exactly when it was. It was like some paper I was reading or something, and they were making this argument. And I was just like, oh yeah, this is not about us listening to signals of aliens. This is why aren't there giant factories here in the solar system pumping out robot probes that are then sending spacecraft off to other stars? That's the and so I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact paper that changed my mind, but someone had made this argument, and it really hit home for me.
I think you've already described some of them. My next obvious question is, what kind of evidence would change your mind? I think you're saying the lack of this, the lack of that.
Yeah.
Those would probably
anything.
be the first answers.
Oh, anything. Yeah. I mean, I can't wait to be proven wrong. I can't. So like if there was an unambiguous signal coming from space that we were able to track the location and determine that the information was of non Earth in origin, that would be a slam dunk. I would just be like, okay, I'm wrong. If we could find evidence here in the solar system of these ancient robot factories, or just anything that is clearly not of terrestrial origin, I would even say if we could find life on Mars that did not share an evolutionary ancestor with us here on Earth, that would be convincing to me. There are techno-signatures. We could see these Dyson swarms orbiting other star systems. We could see megastructures orbiting other star systems. James Webb, when it comes online, one of its abilities in theory is it should be able to detect the chlorofluorocarbons in the atmosphere, the pollution in the atmosphere in other worlds. And that would be very convincing to me. So it would take very, very little to have me shift my worldview on this. And I would love to be proven wrong. I just haven't seen any evidence yet that has shifted me from this position.
So one of those really caught my ear. That if we found life on Mars that maybe had a completely different DNA code, why would that shift your opinion?
Well, it would mean that life has arisen multiple times. So life arose on Earth and life arose on Mars in a completely independent fashion. And so, because right now we only have a sample size of 1. And so if we saw 2 examples of it, then that would show us that just in one solar system, it arose twice. Then it's got to be everywhere.
Okay, so it's just multiplying that one factor in the oh no, I can't remember the name. This factor times this factor times this factor is how many intelligent.
Drake equation.
Thank you, the Drake equation.
Yeah, I mean the Drake equation, this idea of like, what are the number of intelligent civilizations times the number of that survive, blah blah blah. It all rests like House of Cards on this one question, which is the number of times that life has arisen in a star system, and we only know of this happening once. And so we don't have enough data to know, to place some boundaries on this with a sample size of 1. There are some Bayesian estimates that you can make that are really interesting, but just in terms of straight up, if we found it 20 times, then we could start really putting some interesting constraints on what's out there. But right now we only know about the Earth.
Cool.
This is probably not a direct SE question, but you say you kind of feel like you're taking a minority position here. Where do you think the mainstream is on this? I've never actually really thought about this too terribly much. So I'm curious to know like what
I would say the mainstream is, of course, we're not alone. That it is egotistical to think that we're alone. That it is we are anthropomorphizing the who knows what aliens would look like and how they would behave, and we're so narcissistic to think that we're the only intelligent civilization in the universe. What I say is the mainstream. a kind of I don't even know what the term is. I'm sure there's a term for that. Open-minded would be the,
Mhm.
that I am
Right.
closed-minded and people would prefer to be open-minded. Agnostic, I guess.
And
People would be
I guess
agnostic.
both camps would be essentially pointing to the numbers. Like the mainstream would be saying, well, guys, think about all the different the possible number of star systems and all the different galaxies. Statistically, there's got to be a chance. And you're essentially playing the numbers from the other end.
Yeah.
Saying if it would have exponentially grown, that we'd be getting a sniff of something.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have different confidence numbers for the Milky Way versus Andromeda versus a galaxy outside the local group?
No, I mean, I feel it's the same. In fact, it's like the chances of seeing, because like as we look out further into the universe, we're looking backwards in time, but we should be able to see somewhere some civilization that has consumed their entire galaxy, rearranged their galaxy into a form that makes it more appropriate for the way they want to live their lives. Just like we see a city. Like a city is planet Earth, the resources of planet Earth rearranged in a way that makes human existence better, we think. More efficient, I don't know, more material. Anyway, we do it. We make cities. We would see the galactic version of cities, and we don't see it. So my claim extends all the way out to the edge of the observable universe.
Mm-hmm.
I have no confidence beyond the edge of the observable universe. And if the universe is infinite, I have to seed the point that we can't be alone. Because anything possible can happen in an infinite universe, an infinite number of times. So it's only in the finite observable universe that I'll make this claim.
I have some questions from the audience. One person asked, has anyone asked him to define intelligence yet? I'm going to say yes, we did ask. And then I got a definition from your explanation that intelligence essentially means creating von Neumann reproductive probes.
Yeah.
Compared to intelligence or sorry, just having like radio transmitters or even local language and tool use.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's exactly it. Yeah. I would
invite you to nail it down.
Sure. Von Neumann probes. I would say be capable of creating self-replicating robot probes that can travel from star system to star system. That would be my definition of what I think is not out there. But I also feel like once you get life, you eventually get von Neumann probes. And so that's why I make the case more strongly that I don't think there's any life.
Okay.
Yeah. But I would say that's a great, and we obviously can't make von Neumann probes yet, but it doesn't feel a Herculean jump in capability for us. Like we make 3D printers that can 3D print all kinds of interesting stuff. We can fly to space.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like within a few hundred years, we should be capable of doing this, which is a drop in the bucket in the entire human lifetime.
Okay. Someone else asks, how likely is it that there are civilizations that haven't yet developed the ability to travel or communicate beyond their star systems, like we are?
Right. Well, so in my opinion, that is possible. But if they were out there, you would expect to see a distribution of ones that are behind us and ones that are ahead of us, and the ones that are ahead of us would make such a dramatic impact on their local environment that we would perceive it. And so, because we don't see the loud ones, we don't see the quiet ones. Or because we don't see the loud ones, the quiet ones don't exist.
Somebody asks, what does Bayesian estimate mean?
Just probabilities. Yeah, just making that there are, even though you only have a sample size of 1, you can make probability guesses based on other factors that you have available to you.
What's your opinion about that there might be, so I'm talking about in the 20%, you're 80%. So within the 20 that the doubt would kind of include us, I think, at least in this little slice of time. how does that affect your thinking about the great filter? And I'm just introducing a whole new idea that you hadn't addressed, but it's part of this discussion.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So the great filter is this idea that there are various hurdles that humanity or life has had to jump through to reach the state that we are today. Some of these are in the past, and some of these may be in front of us. And ones in the past could be the jump from non-life to life, or the jump from single cellular to multicellular life. And ones in the future could be not globally warming ourselves, not having a nuclear war, not generating a primordial black hole that gobbles up planet Earth, turning the universe into Ice 9, etc. And that argument is interesting and compelling, and feels like the most likely, if we are not alone and we are not first, then the great filter, that there is some great filter that awaits us, is the third most likely candidate in my mind. But it's sort of too horrible to think about, so I don't want to. But even that, I have arguments against many different possible great filters. So I'll go into it. So this idea of the great filter, it has to be like, if there have been hundreds of thousands of civilizations that have attempted to break out of their planets across the universe, whatever the great filter is, it has taken them all out 100% of the time. None have been able to transform their entire Milky Way. And so whatever this thing is in the future, it happens 100% of the time. It is impossible to predict, and it is impossible to avoid. And if you think you're predicting it, you haven't predicted it. And if you think you can avoid it, you can't avoid it. And so when you think about things like, say, artificial intelligence, we create robots that rise up and chase us off planet Earth. Well, robots can go to space. I mean, this is the whole point we're talking about. If we're going to build robots that go to space, so it doesn't make sense that you can't explain the great filter can't be, the robot uprising, because we would see robot empires out there across the universe. We don't see that. There are other things: nuclear war, asteroid impact. Right? The robots can go to space. They can follow. They can chase the space. They can take over. In fact, you would expect the most likely thing to be out there is robot empires, not meat empires.
So we should meet the Cylons, if there are any.
Yeah, we should see the Cylons gobbling up swaths of the sky, expanding at 99% of the speed of light, and yet we don't.
Speaking of the speed of light, is the speed of light, the reality of the speed of light keep you from being 100%? So, like, for example, let's say a galaxy 5 billion light years away. We're seeing it as it was 5 billion years ago. Is the possibility that that life may have developed in the intervening 5 billion years that we won't know about until the future, does that keep you from a higher level of confidence?
No, because there are millions of galaxies within a billion light years of us. Like, there are galaxies within a few million light years of us. So for sure, as you go farther and farther, but as the sphere gets bigger and the time gets older, there's still just an incomprehensible number of galaxies. And so the number out there just keeps going down and down as you look outward. But so no, it doesn't. I don't really find that compelling.
Okay.
So, but just back to the great filter thing I was mentioning. So we can rule out the aliens. We can rule out nuclear war, because a nuclear war wouldn't set us back to nothing. We can climate change, like all these things, right? And even if we utterly wiped out humanity, well, then the octopuses will take over. And if we knocked out the octopuses, the dolphins, and the chimpanzees, then there is life on Earth that goes 10 kilometers deep. And you can imagine it eventually, through earthquakes and subduction and such, rising to the earth and taking over. And eventually the sludge monsters will achieve space flight. Like, life is really hard to kill on planet Earth. And so whatever the great filter is, it has to take out these archaea that are 10 kilometers below the surface of the earth too. And so it leads you to a list of possibilities, which are in the winking planet Earth out of existence possibility. So I'm not super convinced by the Great Filter, only because it does, like, it feels to me like we could stop our technological advancement in many ways, coast to self-replicating robot probes and send them off to their other star systems, and other civilizations could do the same thing.
Paraphrasing a question, does any of the recent news about UAPs influence your thinking in this?
No. Do you want
So what is it about the evidence? No.
Yeah.
This gets me to one of the questions. Is like, how do we test the evidence? Because, okay, first of all, I'm just going to ask rather than assuming that something about the category of the evidence or the type of something about the evidence fails to make a dent with you.
Yeah.
Can you describe what that is and why?
It's dots on a it's testimonial, expert testimony. It is dots on a video screen. Many have perfectly reasonable explanations, and I can imagine many explanations: birds flying in formation, mylar balloons floating by, anomalous radar signals that would explain them. And then you can even imagine Earth-based explanations, more advanced technology that maybe we weren't familiar with, other countries testing out ideas, etc., that could answer the rest of them. And so until there's some actual evidence of something being otherworldly, it just has to, I have to remain firmly in the camp of just being utterly unconvinced by the evidence that's been provided so far. And that, that drives a lot of people crazy when I say that, because they really want, like, now, like, after hearing the testimony of NASA pilots who've seen these things, I'm like until I can hop in the spaceship and go for a test flight, I'm not going to be convinced. I'm not. And so in the range of I'm definitely not making, I'm not saying that the UAPs are not aliens. I can't make that claim. I'm just saying that I'm unconvinced by them being aliens. And so they have to remain in the, like, it's literally there in the name, unidentified.
I'm satisfied. I have no further questions. Diamond, Bob, do you have any?
I guess one question I had was, you mentioned that it would be unpredictable, the Great Filter. Why would it be unpredictable?
Because you would see some fraction of civilizations avoiding it, and then that fraction would go on to, it'd be like antibiotic, like bacteria developing antibiotic resistance. The antibiotics are going to kill 99% of the bacteria, but 1% is going to evolve a resistance to it, and then it's going to take over the entire petri dish. And so we would see the same thing. So we would see 99% of civilizations wipe themselves out in nuclear war, but 1% somehow avoids it and then takes over an entire gigantic volume of space.
So, like, is there a difference between unavoidable and unpredictable there? Or are you using those synonyms?
Yes, I would say, okay. Well, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is that it has to be both. It has to be, it is unavoidable and unpredictable. And even if you could predict it, you couldn't avoid it. But I feel like if you could predict it, then you could avoid it. And so whatever it is, step one, cannot predict it. And then because you can't predict it, you can't avoid it. That some part of making your von Neumann probes makes you wipe your planet out of the universe. And it's the second you turn on your first von Neumann drive, your planet winks out of existence. And the two are inexorably tied, because if you could you could send out that one von Neumann probe, then you would escape the Great Filter, and you would a few billion years later have colonized a gigantic volume of space.
And is evolution central to this argument? Like, is that where the unpredictability factor?
Yeah, I mean, I think from going from life to intelligent life, I mean, we just see here on Earth the the process of evolution through natural selection arrives at the same outcomes so many times: wings, eyes, intelligence, etc., that it feels like a very compelling answer for how life should proceed on a planet. As long as you have a struggle for resources, you're going to have evolution. They're going to reach technology of some level. But I would be perfectly happy to be convinced that in fact intelligence has only risen on Earth one and nowhere else. That would also satisfy that same argument. So I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I follow you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What percent or fraction of the universe, considering both space and time, would Fraser say we have observed?
A tiny fraction. We have observed, I mean, it depends on the wavelength and it depends on the kind of observation that we've made. So we have surveys of the entire sky in various wavelengths that would see a civilization that has gobbled up their entire galaxy and turned it into an infrared signal. Just that, as you enclose your star in a Dyson swarm, you turn the visible light into infrared heat that's given off by the Dyson swarm. If you do that across your entire galaxy, then all you see is infrared, a weird infrared signal. And we have observed the entire
extremely
universe.
Bright.
Yes, an extremely bright point source.
Extraordinary amount of energy coming out at.
That's right. It would look very,
very
very unusual when it should just be a regular galaxy. So those surveys have been done, and I would say, not enough of a representative sample of the universe has been observed in that way to rule out these civilizations. And then same thing within the galaxy, we have looked for those signals and have not seen any example of it. And so again, a representative sample. As it comes to actually like listening for signals for SETI or scanning planets for techno-signatures, we've barely begun to be able to do that.
Could you fit a Dyson sphere in Betelgeuse?
Surrounding it or inside of it? Yeah,
inside the surface that we see, it's a very, very large. I mean, for some reason, I have the orbit of Jupiter as the diameter.
Yeah, that's about right.
But
yeah, it's about the orbit of Jupiter.
Fuzzy.
Yeah,
and so its infrared signature is. I mean, it's hot for us, but.
Yeah, we can see sunspots on the surface of Betelgeuse. It's the only other star in the universe that we're actually able to see the sunspots and blobs on the surface. So, I'm not sure. I haven't like talked to researchers and like say, could Betelgeuse be a Dyson swarm? So I'll have to get back to you on that. I haven't actually talked to anybody.
Thanks.
But it feels to me like somebody would have brought that up, but I cannot give you a certain answer on that.
What's your argument asks, what fraction is enough? And I think that's fraction of what we've observed. And how did you decide that this and I guess this relates to the 80% thing.
Yeah, I think that's like, there are several surveys that have been done. There's the WISE telescope, which did astronomers using the WISE telescope which is an infrared observatory. It's sort of perfectly designed this kind of thing. It observes brown dwarfs. It observes cooler objects here in the solar system. And people did surveys through this data to look for either the civilization that have turned their entire galaxies and also for Dyson spheres inside the Milky Way. They would be fairly observable objects in this spectrum of infrared. So it would be very obvious. And the equivalent, like when you think about quasars are these incredibly bright, we now know are the actively feeding supermassive black holes, they're very obvious. They're billions of light years away, and yet they're these bright point sources that confused astronomers for a long time. They knew they were there, they just didn't know what they were. And from my understanding in talking to astronomers, same thing goes with Dyson swarms and type 3 civilizations, the ones that have turned entire galaxies into swarms. It would be a very bright signal. In fact, there's a really interesting paper that I read fairly recently, just that technological signatures will actually be far easier to detect than just biological signatures of non-advanced life. And so if you've got, say, a planet that is covered in trees giving off carbon dioxide and methane and things like that, you've got a lot of ambiguity about whether or not there's life there. But if you've got a technological civilization where they're driving their cars and they're giving off chlorofluorocarbons, there's no way those molecules can be made randomly by nature. You just know with certainty that there's life there. And so, in fact, the search for technological civilizations will give us a lot more certainty than the search for just regular biological civilizations.
Yeah, something about the inevitability of a local increase in entropy. Sorry, I just had to throw that out there.
Yeah.
Too jargony.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Fraser.
I was going to say, I think it's interesting SEing someone who you're both a scientist and someone familiar with SE, and you're very, it's interesting that you have the familiarity in both maybe the overlapping fields, but in the forefront of your mind as a scientist is falsifiability. You were very quick to be able to point out, okay, if such and such could be shown to me, then yeah, my confidence would drop in a hurry. And that's not always the case in an SE conversation. Quite often people don't have, falsifiability is a foreign concept to them. Whereas you were very familiar with it just in science. And then throw in SE and familiarity and knowing that's really important. So.
Objection, referencing facts, not in evidence. Nobody in the current show has heard anything about Fraser's familiarity with SE.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right.
No, that's okay. I'm
sorry. Was I too slippery for you?
No, not at all. No.
All right.
No. Nobody on the live show knows about any of your familiarity with SE. Would you address that?
Oh, I'm as a member of this sort of science communication community, I'm very familiar with the skeptics community, although it's sort of gotten a little tarnished in the last few years. And so I found street epistemology a couple of years ago. Anthony Manabosco, how do I say it? Magnabosco. Yeah. And a few others, and I even subscribed to his podcast for a while, although I ran out of time. But I found it very fascinating. It fits my style as a, like I try to be a very positive person, and I try to be very kind to the interlocutors that come onto my channel as well. I get a lot of fairly nasty questions, and people like how I handle them. Maybe it's the Canadian in me, but I also just find, and so I found that methodology to be wonderful as a just a very gentle, very productive way to have a conversation with someone that you might disagree with. That everything just feels so black and white these days, and I enjoy being in the gray, and I love, like, step one with someone who I disagree with, even violently, is like, let's find some common ground, and let's just wallow in our common ground for a while and just get to know each other as human beings, and then let's start to explore where we might disagree with each other. And I wish that more people would do that kind of work, that everything is so polarizing and everything is just so polemic. It's really frustrating to see these conversations, these unproductive conversations had out there on the internet, on Twitter, social media, places like that. And that if you sat and talked to a person face to face over a beer or a cup of coffee, you would have so much more in common with each other than you have that are different. and yet all that is revealed is our differences, and it makes me sad. And so hearing street epistemology and I mean, obviously the purpose of it is to help people, guide people from their you know, it's not baseless beliefs, but ones that they haven't thought through the evidence enough yet, is very powerful, and it's very effective, and it's clearly has an agenda, one that I agree with.
Right. I think it helps people. One of the things I think it helps people identify their own bias. Yeah, now your claim is interesting in the sense that it does run. The bias is, oh, we don't want to be alone. So many people want there to be aliens that they will make a claim kind of catering to that bias, and you're kind of operating from the other perspective. So, shucks, we're alone, kind of a thing.
Yeah. And I think that, so I definitely really appreciated and enjoyed the time I spent listening to it and watching some of the videos, and I feel like I incorporated some of the methodologies and techniques. It definitely gave me a chance to stop and think about how I interact with people who come in hot on the material that I'm creating. And I think it's a lot more interesting. It sort of allows me to engage. And so I will often, people will post a really nasty comment on my material on my YouTube channel or whatever, and I'll give them one shot. So I'll come back in a very gentle, very common groundy way. And then if they double down, then fine, banned. Right. But I will find usually that'll break the ice, and then we can have a conversation. And many times people have come around and been productive members of the community, even if we disagree. At least they don't have to be nasty about it, and I find that very encouraging.
Well, we might give you a chance to practice street epistemology yourself as an interviewer. We really appreciate you coming on as a claimant, but yeah, if you have time to stick around a little longer.
Sure. Yeah.
Awesome. People are welcome to call in. There's a link in the chat. I'll post it again in here. I'm having trouble pinning it because I don't have those powers right now. But yeah, if anyone wants to call in and make a claim, if it's related to space, that's even better. But we're happy to evaluate those, or we can even discuss a claim amongst ourselves. I think all of us are carrying around beliefs in our head all the time. So
I'm curious. I'm curious what your guys' take might be, because this is something that I've been thinking about. Because when it comes to God beliefs, quite often people are asked to believe in something they can't see, and I'm curious to know what you guys think about kind of drawing an analogy between like black holes. What if the claim is black holes exist? By definition, that's something we can't see. So do you think there's any value to drawing that?
So it's interesting. I actually just did a interview with somebody who was on the Event Horizon telescope team, the people who produced this incredible image of the Sag A star, which is the supermassive black hole at the heart of the Milky Way, and used this network of telescopes across the entire planet Earth, and they were able to observe this object. And one whole paper of this was the researcher saying, here's this giant list of things that a black hole could be, and how this image compares against these different, essentially falsifying all of these different ideas as best they could. So could it be a sphere of unimaginably dense shape that is giving off infrared radiation? Could it be a different shape than what we understand? And sort of, she went through a bunch of these possible ideas. And even though astronomers have settled on the concept of black holes being the singularity surrounded by the event horizon, this thing called a Kerr black hole, she felt it was really important that to still, like, as you gain more evidence, to go back and attempt to falsify all the other possibilities that it could be. And I was quite impressed at just still astronomers they're not ruling out all these other possibilities for what black holes could be, but as the evidence builds, their certainty in these other possibilities reduce accordingly. And it just kind of shows you the rigor that they go through in this case. And so I'm sure if I asked her the question, like, how certain are you that a black hole is this, as this thing has been defined, she would not be 100%.
Right.
She would be, and she's waiting for the next version of the Event Horizon Telescope so they can see the polarity and they can see they can see blobs of gas and dust swirling around the black hole and get a much better sense of how well it matches different predictions. And even if you've been able to rule out the completely different ideas for what a black hole could be, now you've got 10 different varieties of different theories that explain it, and the images will allow you to narrow in what it could actually be. And it's I thought it was just sort of a beautiful way to see science in action, even on something which I think people would, again, the from an external audience, and I'm sure you've seen this argument quite a lot, like, dark matter, scientists have just invented this idea of dark matter. It's like their religion. And it, like, no, there's so much work that's been done. There's been so many observations. It's a beautiful, it's a mystery. They don't know what it is, but they know that it's there to incredible precision.
Yeah. That's an interesting take, because I think about this, and actually I present this to a certain extent to my students, and talking about how we keep on gaining more and more evidence in support of black hole theory, whether it's gravitational lensing or gravity waves, and then Event Horizon comes around, we're actually getting images or the shadow, and I don't fully understand all the astronomy of it, but it just seems like it kind of built. But I like the idea of, with this new information, not only does it increase our confidence in the existing theory, but it also helps to further disqualify other possible explanations. I hadn't really thought about
like even like
a little bit more.
I mean, even explanations for dark matter, like one of the possibilities for dark matter is that it's primordial black holes left over from the formation of the universe, that they're not a particle, they're just black holes that were formed by overdensities from the beginning of the universe, and that they're still around, and astronomers can't rule them out. And so they have to include them in the list of possibilities, but they are attempting to rule them out through various techniques like gravitational microlensing, looking at looking at other galaxies and watching how stars wink out inside those galaxies or change in brightness as black holes are passing in front of them. And they're able to start putting some constraints in on what sizes these primordial mass black holes could possibly be. And eventually the error bars will overlap and these things will disappear, and then they will have been ruled out. But if you talk to an astronomer and you say, could dark matter be black holes? They're like, maybe. We haven't ruled it out yet. We'll get there.
Machos and wimps, oh my.
Yeah. There are all these candidates. There are probably at this point dozens of candidates for what could explain dark matter, and each one has evidence that could disprove it. And it's a matter of just one after the other disproving these theories until you've got one that you can't disprove, and then the evidence builds that this thing exists. And you will never know with certainty that's what dark matter is, but you will have failed to disprove it. Just like gravity.
We have a caller I'm going to bring in, Quaid from What's Your Argument? He was asking loads of good questions, and maybe even has a claim to share with us. How you doing, Quaid?
I'm good. How are you? How are y'all doing?
Good.
So I don't know if I'll phrase this right or ask this, so I'm just going to kind of say some words and hope that you get the gist. Like a lot of, is it Fraser Crain?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of what you're saying seems like really reasonable to me, but it's reasonable to me in not taking the position that we aren't the only intelligent life, not taking the position that we are. It leads me more agnostic So I'm wondering if maybe there's an issue in my epistemology on it, or I also didn't watch the whole show, so there may have been something that you said that was the definitive thing that puts you in the non-agnostic category on that position.
I mean, I don't know, Bob and Dali, I don't know. Do you feel like I covered that for the first half of the show, or do you want? I mean, I feel like it's the whole argument again.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Well, like,
yeah,
so
it is kind of a general question.
Yeah. So like, I asked the question about what fraction of the universe did you feel like we've observed, considering both space and time?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I got the fraction on that, but it just seemed like, it may have been such a small percentage that it would, again, it lead me to, it seemed like you were alluding to the fact that you did say not much. That was your answer.
No, in the ways that would show an alien civilization making a significant impact on the space, a significant fraction of the universe has been scanned at that resolution.
Could you, like, is there any way you could, like, estimate it at all? I'm wondering, or like in terms of an actual quantification.
Yeah, I mean, I don't recall the exact data, but it feels like a representative sample. So, a statistically significant sample of the universe has been scanned looking for type 3 civilizations outside of the Milky Way, or looking for Dyson swarms inside the Milky Way, that you can say, okay, we've scanned 1 million galaxies and we haven't seen any, when you would expect them to all be turned into Dyson swarms. So I would say, I don't know the exact number, but I would say it is a statistically significant number of them, published in a journal article and peer reviewed.
Do you know the name of that article by any chance?
No, I can, I can dig it up for you, but it's like there's been some newer ones that have come out. Let me see, why survey type 3.
So I didn't mean to put you on the spot on that one.
No. Here, also, I'll put
curious.
a video. Here's an interview with Jill Charter and Frank Marchis from the SETI Institute, doing a search on. I don't know if you can see there's the private chat. So if you do a search for like type 3 civilizations, WISE, SETI, you can find papers that talk about that and the methodologies that they've gone to try and search for them.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And
Might your claim be better? Go ahead.
I was going to say, Gina asked, and it's probably worth clarifying since we've used it a couple of times, what a Dyson swarm is.
Sure. Yeah. So if you take the historical energy use of humanity for the history of, since we started using fire, you can chart an exponential growth curve that runs it's the entire energy output of humanity. And it's fairly significant, and it's growing at, I think, the number like 2% per year. And so if you take that exponential growth and you chart it out into the future, you get to a point where the amount of energy used by humanity matches the output of the sun. And so at some point we will be using as much energy as our sun can put out. And then you say, well, what's the way that you would do that? And the way that you would do that is that you would surround the sun with some kind of solar collecting satellite that is absorbing the radiation from the sun, using it for some energy purpose, and then emitting waste heat. Because if you don't emit the heat, then you are making an oven and you're boiling your electronics and whatever. And, obviously the argument is like, who's to say that we're going to keep raising our energy use? Of course, but we have for 100,000 years. Mm-hmm. So who's to say we won't do it in the future? And what could we ever want to use that energy use for in the future? Who knows? But we've figured out all kinds of creative ways to use energy. Every time we come up with more energy, we figure out ways to use it. We desalinate water. We use air conditioning. We fly our aircraft from continent to continent. So as
And so,
we gain more energy, we will come up with creative ways to use it.
right, and then that Dyson swarm will create a very distinctive signature that should be observable then to an outside.
And we've actually already
telescope,
begun the Dyson sphere.
Mhm.
When you think about James Webb, right? You've got a spacecraft that is flying in orbit around the sun, that has solar panels on board, that is collecting energy from the sun and turning it into science. That is the beginning of our Dyson swarm. And so it won't be like, suddenly we'll wake up and go, you know what, it's time to build a Dyson swarm. It'll more be like we will push outward into the solar system and use up more and more energy coming from the sun. And then one day we'll notice that we're now using all the light coming from the sun. So that is a Dyson swarm. And so, and so that is the idea of, and so then you can imagine an even more advanced civilization taking that concept, but applying it galaxy wide. And so they go and surround every star in their entire galaxy in Dyson swarms. And in fact, maybe even move the stars around in their galaxy into a more useful shape. Like maybe they take their stars, split them up into pieces so that the stars last longer. Red dwarfs last longer than main sequence stars like the sun. Maybe you put them into a big sphere so it's easy to get around from star to star. Maybe you have them orbiting black holes. Who knows what you do? But you would anticipate that just the random collection of stars by gravity is not the most optimal way to organize a galaxy. And again, that sounds ridiculous, but and all it is that if you just chart energy growth. So in fact, I forget, like the year, again, 2300, I think ish, 2600, we will be using all the energy falling on planet Earth. Within a few thousand years, we'll be using all the energy in our star system. And then within a few 100,000 years, we would be using all the energy of the galaxy. And we have no other samples, so we can't see this happen in other places. So we don't know if that's the path. Right. So that's the Dyson sphere.
Would your claim be accurately stated? There are no Kardashev 3 civilizations in our observable universe? Is that really the claim?
Yeah, I would say that is a nice way to encapsulate it. We don't see any Kardashev 3
if you say it that way, does that change your confidence?
No,
same confidence, 80%.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think that's a nice, I mean, like, I think that encapsulates it beautifully, perfectly, and it just makes it feel more ridiculous to say these words out loud.
Sure. Thank you. Maybe Kurglow's coming on. Not sure.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to hear I mean, please, for the love of God, save me from this unrealistic belief.
Yeah.
I've got to be wrong. Oh, and Kurglow is not going to save me. So I'm just going to have to just flap in the wind, believing something ridiculous.
I want
another week.
I know you already defined intelligence, but I'm wondering, like, so I'm guessing you just mean like a generic idea of intelligence, like, or are you excluding?
No, we defined it a little later in the show. So
capable,
a civilization capable of making von Neumann probes that can fly to other star systems.
Right, which you said we're excluded from.
No,
you said it's going to happen.
No, I said that.
I think.
He didn't say that. I said that.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I said that we haven't yet reached that state. There might be a great filter in front of us, or for some reason we decide not to.
Yeah.
Okay. So Fraser, do you think that we reached that state?
We have no.
Okay. So then are we not included in the definition of intelligence in that?
Well, it doesn't feel like to me like there's any reason why we won't reach that state.
Right.
So we are a precursor civilization to the one that is capable of traveling to other star systems. And it seems ridiculous that we're the only one out there.
Okay.
There should have been others out there that are ahead of us. We would see them. It feels like an inevitability at this, like obviously, unless we ruin or destroy ourselves, it feels like we will inevitably reach that state, and not in a very long period of time.
But you would still include us. You would still say we're intelligent until we reach that state because we're going to eventually.
I mean, we are the most intelligent civilization that I can envision in the universe so far.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And then we're also like, in terms of other animals, we're also not going to obviously consider them intelligent under this definition.
No, I don't think there are any
Okay.
other civilizations on a runway to creating von Neumann, any other animals creating von Neumann probes in the
Right.
next few hundred years.
Okay.
Don't tell,
all right.
don't
No
tell
other
your
animals
chickens,
make
Dali.
robots yet.
Yeah,
What's that?
exactly. Yeah,
Don't tell
yes.
your chickens that, Dali.
Yeah, the second the octopuses show us their robot, then we're now in a new space race.
Okay. Thank you.
That's great.
The chickens are real.
That's awesome.
Okay, so we're looking for call-ins. Please, somebody call in with a claim, or somebody here on the panel throw a claim out, or some topic about the meta.
Wait, did you have a claim you wanted to make?
I was sure. I mean, the claim was that we should be agnostic on that, but we've already kind of covered that ground, so
Gotcha.
that's no longer the claim. I can
Okay.
try to think of another one though. I will do my best.
So are you deciding that you don't want to be agnostic about it?
No, I'm still agnostic about it, but I haven't looked at the information. I've looked at some of the information that you've been talking about, but it sounds like there's some new information there that you were talking about that I need to review and look over, like especially in terms in relation or referring to the statistical significance. Like if it were high enough, if I found out that we had observed a statistically significant portion of the universe and not found anything, I think that might actually start to convince me to take your position.
So I did an interview with a researcher named Dr. Robin Hansen. He's an economist. He's the guy who actually came up with the idea of the Great Filter. And he most recently did a paper with some people called Grabby Aliens. And I'll show you the video because they've got a great website about it where they kind of go into the math and the information that is related to the Grabby Aliens hypothesis. The gist being, all right, there. So if you go to grabbyaliens.com, you can see a really sort of nice popular science version of the research that Hansen and collaborators have come up with. And the gist of what's interesting about their research is that not only he doesn't think we're alone in the universe. He thinks that we are, and he estimates that we are about 500 million years away from meeting the first civilization. But it's because when a civilization becomes advanced to a certain extent, they will expand outward at relativistic speeds, close to the speed of light. They'll be expanding at 99% the speed of light. And so you will discover an alien civilization because their empire has swept past you and incorporated you into the empire. And so you can actually see the impact of the various civilizations out there through their expansion, like giant spheres moving at close to the speed of light. And the fact that we don't see any, that the universe around us appears to be kind of pristine, raw material state, allows you to set some boundaries on how many civilizations there are in the observable universe and how far away the closest one is to us. And so like his math skills are pretty strong. And so I have a hard time having an argument with him about that. But I think there's none in the observable universe. He thinks there's maybe one civilization per 100 million galaxies. So they're roughly similar. And that, every grabby alien civilization would dominate our local environment. So that, I think, that kind of mathematical modeling and the arguments that they make, it's interesting, even because we only have a sample size of one, how well you can still put some kind of boundaries on what could be out there. But it's all about expansion. It's all about them grabbing territory, and not about us listening to signals or scanning the skies.
Sounds so colonial.
Oh yeah. I mean, like I always have to tell people, like, I don't think this is a good thing, right? like seeing the Borg is not
Borg are
what
scary.
you want to see, right? And what you want is some gentle civilization that doesn't want to go beyond the boundaries of their star, and they want to share the intelligence and knowledge and love with everyone in the universe. But if they're competing with the Borgs are going to win.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that reminds me of a video I just saw on YouTube by Kurt. I always pronounce the name wrong, but Kurtzog, right?
Yeah, Kurzgesagt.
Yeah. But they just made a video that was exploring this topic, and potentially maybe why we're not seeing them, because you would want to hide yourself from the observation of other people. That theory is called
the Dark Forest, and it's actually was brought to light in this three body problem series by Xijin Liu, and the gist of it is that civilizations survive by realizing that you have to keep your mouth shut, that we're filled in a galaxy of hunters, and only by keeping your mouth shut and don't release any signals, don't let anyone know that you're out there, you can save yourself. And so and I don't buy that argument, because we have the ability to scan the atmospheres of other worlds. Like, bacteria has been giving away the presence of life on Earth for 500 million years. Like, the cyanobacteria has already broadcast our existence to the universe. And so
our radio transmissions are not the threat.
Yeah, exactly. The radio transmissions are not, like, if other alien civilizations think, okay, as soon as we see life, we got to get over there and deal with that problem, so that we don't have a threat in the future by some advanced civilization. Like, we can't, an advanced and bad civilization would see other star systems and say, if we detect life there, we've got to nip that in the bud, because they could turn into a threat to us in the future. And so we would anticipate that alien civilizations would build gigantic telescopes capable of scanning the surfaces of various planets around them for tens of thousands of light years, and would know quite with a lot of certainty what's out there. And so even if you try not to release this, directly send a signal out into space, the cyanobacteria gave us up 500 million years ago. So
there's a question. Do we know what it takes to get to? Yeah, sorry. A question. Do we know what it would take to go at least a fraction of the speed of light? I think using our current, tell me if I'm wrong about this, I think using our current technology, if we were to throw up fission and ion drives, we can get to 1 to 3% of the speed of light, and then of course have to slow down on the other side. And with fusion, maybe it's as high as 10%.
Yeah, so you actually can sidestep the whole conversation, because stars move. And so throughout the entire Milky Way, the stars are drifting around closer and farther away from each other. And so you can actually wait. If you're a patient explorer, you can wait for times when stars come within a few thousand astronomical units of the sun. It happens every couple of million years. You'll have a star system like, I think Gliese 710 is going to come within 50,000 astronomical units of the sun within a million years. So like half a light year within a million years.
So we don't even have to go through the interstellar wastes as long as we've got...
Right.
a lot of
patience.
time to get around to it.
Right.
Sure.
And so if you wait,
Slow
for-
exponentials are fine.
That's right, exactly it. And what's amazing about it is that if you do wait for these beautiful close flybys, then it only adds a few million years to your complete settlement of the entire galaxy time. So it's you can wait for all of the stars to move really close to each other perfectly. And so when you think about Oumuamua and Comet Borisov, we've had 2 objects come into the solar system that were formed in other solar systems. And it's thought that there are actually probably tens of thousands of them, of interstellar objects. And so if rocks can make the journey, the thinking is that smart rocks can make the journey as well. And then the other possibility is that rogue planets are located across the Milky Way. In fact, there could be more rogue planets than there are star systems. And so the actual distances that you need to travel are a fraction of what we initially thought. Once we have really good infrared telescopes and can detect these rogue planets that are floating around, we can do, we don't have to jump 4 light years to get to Alpha Centauri. We can jump a few 100,000 astronomical units to the nearest rogue planet and then catch a ride with that, use it as a source of material to move to the next star system. So the more we learn about the universe, the more we realize that it is more conducive to spread than we previously used to think.
We have another caller. Quaid, I'm going to go ahead and let you go. And if you want to call back later, if you want, that's no problem too. And we have Dorf coming on.
Hey everyone,
called in
thank you for
before.
having
Welcome.
me. Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been a
Sure.
really good conversation so far. I've learned a lot of things that I definitely did not know before this, and maybe I still don't fully understand, but I've written a lot of things down, and I'm gonna be studying it with my roommate, who is a little bit more into this kind of stuff, because he brought up a theory to me called brain theory or brain world. You know what brain world? That we're in the membrane, that the world is that our universe is a floating membrane that is floating through the vastness of the universe, and it's a 3D membrane that is moving itself into a much larger space.
Has something to do with like string theory and like the origin of the universe with colliding brains, BRANE.
Exactly, and not like the brain, not not the brain that's in head.
Yeah, and it's like one of the offshoots of string theory is the prediction of these multiple universes and as they interact, you get big bangs. Yeah.
That's wild. And my roommate obviously knows a lot more about this and is just giving me little treats and snippets of the information. And I'm meant to research this on my own, and I have my own troubles
Good
with
luck.
that. But I know.
That's mean, I think.
Believe me, I know.
Yeah,
But,
okay.
He doesn't want to be a roommate anymore.
Yeah. That's hardcore. I would, if you are interested though, oh my God, I don't even remember his name. Brian Green.
Mm-hmm.
So Brian Green has
from
written a
the
lot
paper,
about
he
this.
wrote Paper Towns.
So his,
or is that John? That's John Green.
Yeah, Brian Green, right? Brian Green has been on like PBS and such.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah. So Brian Green, the physicist, and so his book is The Elegant Universe and the Fabric of the Cosmos. And he did a series for Nova where he talked about string theory and went into brains and provided a lot of really nice graphics. So
nice.
It can help you wrap your brain around brains a little better.
I guess the thing that I always ask my roommate, who you're not going to believe this, is also named Dorf, but that's kind of how we found each other. But he thinks that we could be inside this membrane without being able to feel like the fluid, or like, I don't understand it myself, but not being able to physically sense that we would be in it, or that we would be unawares as to like the wetness or the fluid of it.
I think you need Dorf to defend this theory.
I would have to get him on here, and that would be a whole thing.
Defense by proxy.
I know, but those are my main questions. Is there any questions for me?
We promise to be gentle.
Yeah, well, I'll have him come on here because I would love to see you grill him. Because I'm not mad at him, but you know what I'm saying.
We do the really light grilling where the marshmallow only barely gets color, just a
Yeah,
little brown on the
just a
marshmallow.
little bit, and he would be
Gentle.
able to be a little bit more respectful towards me at the end. I think.
I've just got that song in my head, Insane in the Membrane. Who did that one?
I don't know. Does anyone
Cypress
know
Hill?
who did that one? Is it Cypress Hill?
Tonight's Cypress Hill. Very good. Yeah. All right.
All right. Well, I'll take my answer off air as a very good conversation, and I respect every one of you.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Dor.
Was there further answer to the question? He would take his answer off air, but I think we
About-
answered it. I think we
Yeah,
referenced brain theory.
I
I
must
I-
plead in ignorance.
I mean, I think my understanding today is that the problem with string theory as a way to explain, essentially to unify gravity and quantum mechanics, is that a lot of work has been done and the theory has kind of exploded and has so many different directions now that it's going, that the math can sort of explain anything and work in any direction, and hasn't been able to still make any predictions that have been able to be demonstrated in various experiments. That's what remains in the world of theory. But what is interesting is that the math that was used to develop string theory has found practical applications in other ways. I forget exactly what it is. And so like a lot of people feel that it's become a bit of a dead end in research. But
It's really cool because we learn more math than physics.
Yeah. And that the mathematics actually has now come back around and been used in other applications that have nothing to do with quantum mechanics and uniting quantum mechanics and gravity, which is kind of interesting. But I don't know enough about it. It is way beyond my pay grade.
I have a selfish question. It's not about SE, but I have 3 astro geeks in the room. I have to ask. So, photons. Since the cosmic microwave background radiation, I expect that most photons that have been emitted have not landed yet, have not been absorbed. Because our universe is expanding and photons are continuing to be emitted, a lot of them, I would think that the amount of energy that is in photons is increasing on 2 different, both in space and in time expanding. And I want to understand, what is the fraction of mass energy that is in unabsorbed photons compared to everything else? We talk about dark energy, we talk about boson matter, all these things. Is it an infinitesimal slice, or is it something that might significantly? I'm actually wondering if there's an effect in dark energy, but the first question is, how much is there? Is there a way for us to do a back of the envelope? A proportion to the total energy, which I'm assuming that energy has the characteristics of mass, even if it's not rest energy. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe
so you'd be including
maybe something that's only kinetic, doesn't have any effect on the curvature of space-time.
So, I mean, this is probably again beyond my pay grade, and so you guys stop me if I'm wrong on this one. But when you think about the release of the photons from the cosmic microwave background radiation, like 370,000 years after the Big Bang, it was
plus
this time
all the stars since then.
Sure. Yeah. But it was this time when the universe it went from opaque to being transparent, and light was finally able to escape out into the universe. And so we measure this light. But that's, and like the entire universe was like the surface of a red star. Like if you could go back in time to that moment, you'd look around, everything would look like the surface of a red giant. And we imagine this like instantaneous clearing of the fog to go from opaque to light to transparent, but it wasn't that way. It was a slow, gradual transition from opaque to transparent. And so the photons that were being released by the various atoms were bouncing around off of each other and being absorbed and then re-emitted and absorbed and re-emitted. And it took probably tens of millions of years where it started out like a really thick fog, and then it was a less thick fog, and then it really, and then you could look, it looked like it was the size of the Milky Way, and yet light was still bouncing around off of the density of the particles that were there. So I don't know the exact answer to your question, but it feels to me like there's not a lot of that original primordial cosmic microwave background. Like it's
right.
It's
The CMBE is a teeny tiny fraction of that light.
Like whatever is left is the stuff that finally couldn't bounce into another particle. And it's not like it's not like suddenly it was all released in one go. It took millions of years for it to just keep bouncing around until finally, particle by particle, photon by photon, it shot off in a direction. It never bounced into anything else as like the final thing. But the total amount of energy and mass, etc., in the universe has remained roughly the same. If you sort of measure from what was present back shortly after the Big Bang to now, it's just less dense.
Hmm.
I don't know if you guys want to fact check anything I just said there.
I wish I could. I can say that, this sounds really familiar to like a math problem that I did in a cosmology class during grad school. Like I vaguely remember like a string of, quantifying the different amounts of matter. And yeah, I do think it's a very small fraction, but, if you were to ask me, like, how do I know that, if I went through, it would be like such a vague memory. I have now.
Well, one of the things that's really interesting though is that this energy is still out there. I mean, we see the temperature of the universe at whatever it is, 2.8 Kelvin, I think. That is a temperature, and it is warmer than absolute zero. And so there will be this time in the far, far future when the only usable energy out there will be the cosmic microwave background, and that energy differential will be what you'll be forced to use to maintain your civilization. And so there's been some really neat ideas. Like you could, for example, live in the, near a black hole or near a neutron star where the time dilation is so great that it blue shifts the cosmic microwave background radiation back into a higher energy. And so you could actually, as you live in this time dilated zone around a black hole, the sky would brighten back up again because you're experiencing 1,000,000 years for every day of living around this black hole. And so you'd be able to continue to extract this energy that's falling upon your civilization and compress.
I read a book about 15 years ago that seemed to talk about the von Neumann part in the first part and what you just said about the compression around a black hole in the last third. And the conclusion was, so we are in a simulation.
Well, that's a whole other argument that I'm not willing to defend.
I wasn't very impressed.
I've got to roll. I'm sorry, but
yeah, no
Fraser,
problem.
Thank you, Bob.
It's been a blast. I'm going to sneak out.
Thanks,
Thank
Bob.
you.
It's great to meet you.
Yeah, were you saying that you wouldn't defend the argument that we are in a simulation, or that we
Right.
are not in a simulation? Okay.
I would not defend that we are in a simulation.
Hmm.
Yeah. In the same way that I would not defend that there's no God.
Hmm. The question of like when, like how far do you go in your skepticism is interesting to me. Like, because you can question this stuff all the way back, right, to, do I exist? Am I in the hologram universe and all of this? When you're thinking about when do you believe something, like how do you go about, I mean, it's not even, I guess maybe it's not a decision, but what do you think makes you cross the threshold into, I believe this, I believe I'm really here, I believe there is an external truth, that sort of thing?
Well, I like that idea of beliefs. Oh, I lost my camera overheated and died.
Oh,
So I've got to I probably have to
Gotcha.
In
leave.
Canada,
Yeah, I
it's
know.
too
I
cold there
know.
for that.
I know.
okay.
The room that I'm in is too warm, and my camera didn't like being online for this length of time. So I probably need to wrap up.
No
But
problem.
and I forget the name. But what is it? The idea that your ideas are loosely held, but
Hmm.
strongly evidenced, but loosely held. I forget the exact argument for it, but that's my feeling.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot harder to convince me of something than it is to unconvince me of something.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's what you mean.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
great. I
Awesome.
love to be proven wrong. I love
Me
it.
too.
I find it
learned-
really
I
exciting.
learned things then.
Yeah. It's really thrilling. And when there is uncertainty in a situation and really compelling argument on both sides of it, that's when I get really excited and I want to report on it and talk about it and show that. But anyway, I'm going to run.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Clearly my camera has decided this is not going to happen any longer. But thank you so much
Well-
for having me, everybody. And
Thank you.
Yeah,
Meeting you has
good
made
luck
my
with your
day.
show. All right.
Absolutely. Yeah. You've been more than generous with your time. So thank you. Have a good
All
one.
right. Take care,
Thank you,
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye. Yeah, physics
That
and
was fun.
cosmology and stuff.
know.
Cessation of time. A perfect name for this question. Cessation of time. Can the universe ever become uniform so that there isn't a temperature differential to use? Yes, absolutely. The heat death is a potential thing, theoretically. And what Fraser was talking about is that if you can park yourself close enough to a black hole, there is at least a black in a direction. And if you're close enough, time compression will blue shift what temperature on one side you have as the other. And the fellow in that book was saying that that effect was infinite as you move closer and closer to the. I don't even know what infinite means in that particular case. I don't like it when physicists use infinite in their calculations. I think they're wrong.
Oh, we do that a lot.
I don't. Yeah, I know, and I think there's very little that you can get from when you put infinite in algebra.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of algebra in which infinite is inappropriate to use. But of course, infinite self-interaction of the electron, infinite divisibility. My argument falls flat so many times with people that know math better than me, so I'm probably wrong.
So you have low confidence in that claim.
I have very low confidence in the claim about infinities.
Gotcha.
I just, for me, when infinities are invoked, infinity, therefore, that's a big red flag to me. You know, because Hilbert's Hotel something something, therefore.
Well,
But that
I
might
think we
just be
can
guilt by association.
probably wrap up unless there's any other
Okay.
callers that want to come in and make a claim. And there's we can hang on for another minute. That I really enjoyed that conversation. It's definitely given me some things to think about as well, and I'm sure a lot of our audience. It is one that, like, as he said, it's a very commonly accepted hypothesis that there is intelligent life out there, and that we just haven't found it yet because of this small search space and many of the things he addressed. But yeah, I think he did a really good job of addressing the counter arguments to the claim, and the way he addressed falsifiability and all of that. Like, it was a nice model of what you'd like to see in people's thought process. So
Yeah. I really love it when I'm talking to maybe scientists and scientifically minded people about whatever. Almost doesn't matter what it is. I learn something cool, and I also learn what it is I need to be able to calibrate my confidence. I think it's possible to lie. See, I think lying is more than one thing. Lying could be, I tell you something I don't believe. Or lying could be, I tell you something that I believe, but I misstate my confidence in a significant way. If I tell you I'm absolutely sure when my reasons for believing shouldn't lead me to absolutely sure, I'm lying to you about how sure I am,
Yeah, you're lying about your
even if I
confidence.
fully believe it.
Mhm.
So, like, apology is very careful about not saying people are lying. I have a broader definition of lying. I don't want to accuse people of that, but for my own head, I would count overstating my confidence as lying as much as if I told you something that I thought was false.
I'm wondering if there may be lots of examples where people are overstating their confidence because they just have a misplacement of confidence. Like they
Mhm.
really believe it and they believe it too strongly. Like, how would you tell the difference between whether they are just overly confident rather than misrepresenting their confidence?
It can be difficult if their confidence is nuanced, but if their confidence is unnuanced as the average politician who's trying to get my vote,
Hmm.
if you are absolutely sure about something for which the evidence to make you sure would be hard, difficult, I'm going to believe you're overconfident, especially if I have some countering evidence.
Right.
I really, really hate it when I'm 85% sure of something, and then somebody comes on with an absolute certainty and argues for my position. If anything, that makes me reduce my confidence much more than it's willing to increase my confidence. Just because I smell it as a big red flag.
Right.
But then again, I'm being hit with political ads a lot lately because it's an election coming up.
Oh, yeah. So Kerglow says, we have no tested methodology to talk about alien civilizations. We have no method that's been proven to give right answers. All we have is assumptions and speculations.
I think the assumption that we're making is that thermodynamics is how work is done.
Mhm.
And that I think I could defeat Fraser's assumption about Kardashev 3 civilizations immediately by writing the science fiction that we come up with a new energy source that pulls and pushes to alternate dimensions that don't affect our own physics.
Hmm.
So I can get work done by reaching outside, and that's easier than having huge radiators to get rid of the heat on the side of a thermodynamic engine. So yeah, all I got to do is come up with a sidestep to thermodynamics, and now his whole thing evaporates. But I think the assumption, I think it is I am firmly convinced that we do not observe any Kardashev 3 civilizations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm wondering if that would be like a special pleading sort of thing, or you're working you're trying to find a way to still fit the claim of that there are intelligent civilizations or Kardashev 3 civilizations out there. Like we
Yeah, what would be
always
the
like
defeater
pull in,
given the
yeah,
evidence? Mhm.
right,
Sure,
right,
absolutely it's an ad hoc, but I think
yes.
ad hocs are really important when you're trying to do the falsification side of a test. All I have to do is introduce. I can introduce an ad hoc in order to introduce doubt.
So to help identify a falsification criteria, that's where you see
Mhm.
ad hoc being useful.
Yeah, if you give me a theory and you give me your evidence,
Right.
I could say, here is a potential. Yes, it is an ad hoc alternate explanation. And
Right.
if this is possible, then it should be on the side of a defeater.
But then you wouldn't go so far, and there I'm using the word but
Mhm. Sure.
you wouldn't go so far as to believe the ad hoc hypothesis.
Correct. I would not
Right.
be believing the ad hoc.
Gotcha.
But if somebody gave me several ad hocs that were plausible save for one little thing, if I thought any of those things were even slightly plausible, I should reduce my confidence some.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool.
But then again, as I said, it's a lot easier to reduce my confidence in things than to increase it. Which might be that I'm stuck in a bit of a Pyrrhic epistemology problem. the Pyrrhic thing is the Pyrrhic skeptic, the one who's become so skeptical he has to have his students lead him around because he doesn't trust his eyes to follow the path.
Right.
It's the worst case for for a skeptic going too far.
Hmm.
And I fear that I, in some regards, might be in that state. Just
Awesome.
because it's very difficult to get my confidence very high on things, at least on my Sigma scale.
How would that affect the way you live in the world? I guess that's where you say if you need to be guided around or something, that's the
Okay.
most extreme example.
Here's a really obvious one. I am currently under trusting that I understand the effects of medication that I maybe should be using relating to blood sugar. The medication in case is metformin. I have gotten conflicting answers from professionals as to what it does, why it does it, how it does, what are the side effects, those kinds of things. And very consistently, the people I'm talking to, I've only have like 2 counterexamples, but everybody else has failed to pass my epistemological rigor. I'll ask the doctor something. The doctor will make the claim, metformin does. Okay, the first claim is it controls the liver as to making blood sugar from blood fat. Okay, it's a glucagon antagonist. We can skip that part. And then the other claim is that it helps push blood sugar into the cells. And when I ask, how does it do that? The doctor gets very flustered and says, you don't need to know. Yes, I do.
Do you think
unless I know that you know, I don't trust your answer.
Is there a time component in there? I mean, like the you don't need to know question. If there's, I'm thinking of like there's the anecdote of that Sam Harris has mentioned before, where if somebody gets shot with an arrow, right, and then the doctor comes over to try and pull out the arrow and stop the bleeding, and
sure,
before the doctor comes near him, the person who was shot says, "No, I need to know about this injury.
Yeah.
What kind of arrow did I get shot with? And who was, what horse was this person riding on? And
sure,
and all of these
exactly.
details,
that's a pyrrhic
right?
skepticism kind of thing, where you're not moving yourself properly through life and making right choices. So the way I handled that was I started by taking the medication, and then I observed what it did to my daily blood sugar tests, and observed what it did to my weight gain. And I determined that it reduced my blood sugar by about 10%. And I was gaining more than 1 kilogram a month while on it. And stopped it. And in 2 months, I lost the weight. So it's also having the side effect of almost uncontrollable weight gain. So I need a better solution, because that much weight gain is going to be as dangerous to me as that extra blood sugar.
Right.
Yeah, so I am being willing to try things, but to continue them in spite of negative side effects is, I need to have better confidence. I need to have a better understanding. I need to have a better grasp on the balance of advantages and disadvantages.
Gotcha.
Having a very difficult time getting medical people to talk to me about it. Because, it's strange.
Well,
so if any of you really know about all this, hit me up, jugglingLessons at gmail.com, or here, or whatever. I'm very interested to know, and I promise to minimize being an asshole about it.
And thank you for the reminder that the arrow story is from Buddha. And yes, I heard it from from Sam Harris, but he did reference that it was Buddhist reference.
Sam Harris should be an honorary Buddhist.
Awesome. I think we are going to go ahead and wrap up, and because we are just we've gone off the space theme for today, but we will be back. We may be testing another time later this week to see if maybe a Tuesday evening works. And so stay tuned. And we will likely also still be here next week.
Yeah.
So
Pretty much until if we try another time, we'll try that other time, see if it works. Keep this time going until we're sure that the other time would be better.
Right. Exactly. All right. Thank you, Dali.
Thank you.